Okay, so let's move on to the more powerful kind of calculations that we can do. What we're going to look at is the if function, the logical and the lookup functions. What you're doing with these particular functions is you're applying a test to it. So for example, if I have a spreadsheet that has everybody's grades in the class on a exercise, let's say our last exercise on the condo part, and I have A, B, C, D, and so on, or I have, even better yet, I have the values that give me a 92, a 74, and so on. If I wanted to apply an alphabet as far as a grading system to that, I could use an if statement. I could say if the person got a score between the value of 90 and 100, then I wanted the spreadsheet to reflect an A value. So that's basically the structure of how if statements work. Remember, these are considered arguments. So I'm saying if this is the argument, comma, return what is the true value. Go back to the beginning of it. What happens if this is false? Then apply what's false. So that's the basic structure. So you have if, you have the logical test, comma, what the value is if it's going to turn out to the test is true, comma, what the value will be if it turns out to be false. Let's work a couple exercises and you'll see what I mean on this. Okay, we're on the same file we were on before, but we're going to use the other spreadsheet. Okay, so notice on my screen I have this worksheet where we ended off with. And I went ahead and finished all of the calculations here. So if you want to double check your values, you can do that. Now, to get to the other spreadsheet, we're going to have to click on the bottom tab. So we want to be in H03-4. So that's down on the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. Notice it's down on the bottom right here. So I'm going to click on that particular worksheet. And we have a completely different worksheet. We're looking at the APR, the monthly payment, and the monthly PMI. Let's look at the rest of the worksheet though, to see what we're actually calculating here. Notice over here, right, it's giving us today's date, the payments of year, the PMI rate. What's that? What does a PMI rate mean? If you remember from our last calculation, that's the interest rate for each payment. Now what I want you to notice here is right here. They've actually provided a table in the worksheet that gives all the information about what the rate would be for each year. Why would they want to do that? Well, when you're working with a worksheet, think about it. If you have to constantly come back and make modifications to your worksheet, maybe your rates change, or in this case, percentages change, you want to be able to point to an area of the worksheet. For example, let's say I changed my grading structure. Rather than to 90 to 100, I went the 7-point scale from 93 to 100. I wouldn't want to go through and recalculate every single cell that worked with that particular formula. So what I could do is actually create a lookup table. So almost in a database structure, if you're really thinking about it. So I'm putting like a mini database there that's giving me what the values are and what they represent. And that's what they've actually done on this particular worksheet, is they've given you a table within the worksheet. Okay, so in this particular exercise, we're going to start with the APR. We want to look up what the value is based on our years, So we're going to look up the value. I noticed that's 4.625. So for an APR, what's an APR? As I mentioned to you earlier, Excel's not going to tell you exactly how to calculate these items. You're going to have to know for yourself, or at least that portion of it. But APR stands for your analyzed percentage rate. Where are we getting that? We're going to get that from our table up here. So I know based on a loan that's 25 years that I'm going to use an annualized, I can't pronounce the word, interest rate of 4.625. But in this instance, I'm not going to actually just point to years 25. I'm going to point to the entire table. So I don't have to discern what's in particular range. So think about, that means if I'm pointing to a table, I can make any change in this column. I can make any change in the years, and it'll automatically recalculate the payment based on that change because it's pointing to the table. So let's check it out Okay, so to start that formula, we're going to go up to the top, and actually you're probably seeing, okay, so let's go grab the formula function. Now you may be on your home tab, so if you are, just click on formulas, and then let's go up to lookup and reference. Notice way down on the bottom we have an item called VLOOKUP. Go ahead and click on that. I'm going to move this out of the way so we can see our worksheet, so we know what we're working on. So I actually want to point to F9, and it's going to look up the value of what the value is sitting in F9, and I'm going to click on the next item, table array, and I'm going to identify where the table is on my worksheet. So here, I'm just going to go out to my worksheet and point to the cells where it is, okay? So what I did is I clicked and dragged it where I wanted it. You could also do the same thing by clicking on that icon there. Okay, so I want to make sure we always point to those. So I need to make sure we change these to absolute, don't I? That'll change it to absolute, so it always points to those cells. Okay, now the next one, it says column index number, and I'm going to click on that one. And notice, remember I mentioned what you need to key in, what they're looking for is defined right here. Okay, all in here is where that's defined. So read through that. But basically what we're going to need to do is to identify how many columns in the table we need. So I'm going to choose 2 because I want 2 columns. I want the year and I also want the rate. And value it returned. So it's telling me based on the years that's sitting here, because we keyed that in our formula, F9, based on the table right here, based on these 2 columns, returned a value of 0.404625. Very quickly, I know I'm pointing to the right cells. Now, we want to also identify the range lookup. This is our logical explanation. So if we have an invalid formula keyed in F9, we want to make sure it returns a value that you can easily recognize that there's an error in your worksheet. So how we do that is we type in here. Okay, so let's look at the range lookup because that's a logical test for this particular formula. So if it's true, it's going to return the value. If it comes up with a false range, meaning something's out of order, it's going to return false. So let's add that item to there. So I'm going to type the word false, okay? And notice it actually came over here on this side. Now, remember when you key the formulas, especially in here, you don't use the equal sign. The reason for that is because it's already keyed right here. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK, and it should return the value of 4.625. Now, if you didn't return that value, then there's an error. So you need to go back and redo that to make sure that you have it coded correctly. What I want you to do is just take a moment and look at the formula that it's established for this particular item. So look up here. It says VLOOKUP F9 D4 through E6. So this is identifying right here, is identifying our table and what it's supposed to return. The absolute on that. So let's just copy those down. So very quickly I'm able to figure out the rest of those. Okay, it gets a little bit more tricky when we're doing the monthly payment, but I always tell students, make sure you read what's on the screen. It'll identify what needs to be done. So let's go up to the payment function. So we're going to go up and click on financial, and we're going to look for payment, and we get another function argument box. And for the rate, it's looking for, make sure you check this. So it's looking for the interest rate per period for the loan. For example, if you have 6% divided by 4 for the quarterly, then it's 6%. So to define what that is, we're going to say the APR divided by the month. So let's remove that, and I think that should fix that, right? And then I'm going to make that an absolute again. So I'm going to hit function 4, because I always want to point to that 12 months. Okay, so that worked. That fixed it. So let's look over here, and I know it worked because I've got a new value here. All right, so let's look at the NPR. So I'm going to click on NPR, and what am I supposed to get with an NPR? I'm supposed to enter in the total number of payments for the loan. So where are we going to get that value? We're going to take F9, 25 years, and we're going to multiply that by how many months, right? So times, and I'm going to go how many payments per year, right? And notice it returned up here, it returned 300. That's what I'm looking for. But I want to make sure that this is an absolute so I can copy it to all the different cells. So I'm going to hit function 4. Okay, so let's look at the PV. What is a PV? PV means present value. It's the total amount of future payments. Now this is the key right here, future. You haven't made them yet, okay? When you key the present value, you always have to key it as negative because you have not made the payments yet. That's the easiest way to remember that, okay? Minus sign, meaning a negative, and then we're gonna click on D9, the amount that we're financed. You don't want to pick the whole house cost because you've already put $80,000 down. We only want to finance $320,000. So notice again, over here, it's giving you the full amount of what you've done. Click OK, it should return the amount of $18,001.44. This means if I took a loan out for $320,000, I put $80,000 down, which was 20% down, and I financed it over a 25-year period at an interest rate of 4.625, I should be paying a monthly payment of $1,801 each month. Okay, so let's look at monthly PMI. What is monthly PMI? Mortgage company wants to make sure that you can make the monthly payments. We can use an if calculation to figure this out because there's a certain range that they're looking for. If your loan hits within this particular range, you need to pay PMI. But once it hits a certain range, you no longer have to pay it. So we can use an if statement to figure out this calculation. Okay, so let's calculate this. So I'm going to click on monthly PMI, and this would be a logical, meaning if I do something, what happens? If it's true, what happens? If false, what happens? So I'm going to click on logical, and I'm going to click on if. And we get our function argument box again. E9 is greater than, so E9. So if E9 is greater than, okay, so I always want to point to that, so I need to make that an absolute. So I'm going to click on the next box. So in this case, if the customer pays more than 20% down, they don't have to pay that premium. So we would enter a 0 for that. It's when they pay less than 20%, they're going to take out an insurance policy in case that loan defaults. So here we're going to actually enter a value. We want to use the value that is in D8 or D9 rather. So we're taking the amount financed and we're going to multiply that. I want to multiply that by what is in B6, my PMI rate, and I'm going to divide it by what B5. So let's click OK. If you have any questions or if you need any help on these spreadsheets, by all means, email me, send me a copy of your spreadsheet. I'll be more than happy to help you.